Hello and welcome to Cloud Speed by Deloitte. In this regular podcast series, we'll delve into the world of cloud, answering some of those tricky questions, getting to grips with all that cloud has to offer, and keeping you up to speed on recent developments. So let's begin, shall we? Here's your host, Adam Gorguri.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to this episode of Cloud Speed by Deloitte. I'm Adam Gogarty, Director in our Cloud Engineering practice here at Deloitte, and I'll be your host for this episode. In Deloitte's 2022 Tech Trends report, we found that 72% of IT leaders already use edge computing, with an increasing amount of enterprise data created and processed at the edge or in the cloud. Edge computing can, of course, mean a broad range of things, from what organizations do today to what they're planning to do tomorrow. In many ways, we are seeing enterprise IT becoming increasingly distributed, often across multiple cloud providers and edge locations, driven by a range of requirements from in-store experiences in the retail sector to the development of smart ports in shipping. So in today's podcast, we're asking the question, where's my cloud? And to help answer that rather mysterious question, I'm delighted to be joined today by my colleagues David Green, Luke Baylis, and Steve Cowan. David, would you like to kick off introductions?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm a partner in our telecoms, media and technology practice, and I specialise in 5G, where I lead it for the UK and for the European region. And in my spare time, I'm a bit of a geek. And at the moment, I'm particularly interested in smart homes and really automating all of the technology I have in my home.
Hi, I'm Luke Baylis. I'm a director in our cloud engineering team here in the UK. My role is offering kind of networking advice to our kind of UK and kind of global organizations. Outside of work, I have two very young boys. And so I've been building my knowledge and perfecting my impersonations of various arrays of dinosaurs for their amusement.
Hi, I'm Steve Cowan. I'm a senior manager within our tech strategy and transformation team at Deloitte. I also lead 5G and enterprise across NSE, so very much talking to clients about how to adopt 5G and edge compute into their organizations. Outside of work, my time is fully taken up by my 9-month-old daughter, who doesn't quite have the dinosaur names down to a T yet, Luke, but is very much a budding technologist. She doesn't leave my phone alone and loves to kind of chew on it at the minute. So yeah, very much runs in the family, I think.
Fantastic. It looks like we've got some definitely some new dads here. I'm dealing with a 1-year-old at the moment, so I'll be giving you a call, Luke, to get some top tips on some dinosaur names. Well, I'd say we've managed to assemble an all-star team today to answer this question, particularly given the range of experiences and perspectives that we'll need on what's happening today in the space versus what the trends are for tomorrow. So David, I guess what a fun podcast title we have today. Why are we asking ourselves, where's my cloud?
It is indeed a fun subject, and perhaps a little bit of context. I guess when we first started talking about cloud, it was all about moving on-premise compute from the data centers in the enterprise facilities into this cloud provider in a central location. Motivation being limitless compute, flexibility, et cetera, and the ability to do some magical things in the cloud that just simply aren't possible in the enterprise location. I guess today's reality is that there is not one single cloud, and we live in a hybrid world where we have a mixture of on-premise data center work and multiple clouds, and our clients have a combination of those various different things. That hybrid model does give us the flexibility, I guess, of and choice of having those various different platforms, but it brings with it the challenge of having decentralized data and some interesting connectivity challenges to interconnect all of these various different compute sources. I guess all of that is sitting in a backdrop of a world where data volumes are increasing exponentially, and our requirements for compute are more and more mobile and require more and more agility. And those latter trends are driving two new technological developments, and the first being edge compute and the second being 5G. Edge compute allows us to do an awful lot more processing of that data as close to the point where it is produced as possible, which obviously reduces the amount of connectivity that we need to have, because we can digest that data, produce information from it, and only communicate the information into the center. 5G brings massive connectivity capacity to get that data from the source to that edge compute. And those two technologies are really revolutionizing our thinking about cloud. But ultimately, what cloud and edge are doing is even further decentralizing our IT, and that's making it rather impossible to answer the question of where is my cloud?
I definitely kind of second that, David, because what we're finding is that organizations have often got away with an awful lot of cloud creep, shall I say, at least initially, where the heritage architecture of their network fabric and security controls is not really exposed. But in many cases, what we're seeing is the aggregate of that cloud creep is underestimated and not always wholly visible. It's not unusual nowadays for an organization to have at least a couple of hyperscalers, perhaps 20 to 40 known SaaS applications, a raft of business web-based subscriptions, and increasingly a growing set of critical digital partner solutions that form part of their supply chain and are equally as important as what they control and manage themselves. When you add all of this together, it's not only creating an east-west problem for traffic flows going inter and intra-cloud, but it's also creating a north-south problem for how those services are presented to the end user and ultimately drive that customer experience. The reality is that this presents a mix of performance, capacity, and security issues which needs to be managed. But an organization can no longer expect to own and control this end to end. Because of my background, obviously, I focus on the network and security aspects of this problem, but ultimately part of the problem and the solution is ultimately down to the applications and service providers themselves. And what we've often seen is they've often been slow to adapt to the changing dynamics.
Fantastic. Thanks, Luke. So, David, should our listeners be thinking about this today or tomorrow?
So, Adam, I think it's very much a today topic. And in fact, the evidence we have from speaking to our clients is that it is the case. We regularly run a survey that we call the Advanced Wireless Survey, where we interview chief information officers from around the world on their attitudes towards emerging advanced wireless technologies. In the most recent survey, we asked them very specifically around their intentions to use 5G. And around 60% of those CIOs said they are trialing or deploying 5G and edge compute right now. Around half of those, i.e. about 30%, are actually deploying 5G, whether it be in a specific department in their enterprise or enterprise-wide. So it's these clients that are typically have the need to move vast quantities of data either across their campus really fast to process that data locally, or to move it centrally to a central compute areas. These are our early adopters, but they are growing in number, and it won't be long before all CIOs are going to be considering 5G and edge as really important for their business. Steve's been working specifically with many of these clients in our 5G labs, and can talk about the sorts of business problems that they've got and have been solving there. Steve, do you want to just talk about a few examples?
Yeah, more than happy to, Darren. I certainly agree with your point there. It's definitely today's, I would use the word opportunity. Maybe that's my naive, optimistic view or the Imagineer's view, but it's certainly today's opportunity. And I think it's going to get even more complex in tomorrow's world, because my view is that we're in this kind of connectivity space race. And that's definitely evident when you look at some of the markets in China and the US specifically. We've got, and there's huge economic and strategic value that can be leveraged, and clients are looking to kind of use that to advantage in the market. If you look at some of the analyst predictions alone, they're absolutely huge for what 5G and edge compute can add in terms of value. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars They are also very broad, and that is based on the number of applications or the number of solutions that clients will adopt. And you only have to look at the work that Deloitte's doing around the future of manufacturing, the future of healthcare, the future of supply chain, to know that a lot of these solutions that drive improvements in manufacturing, healthcare, supply chain, etc., are driven by more flexible, faster, more responsive connectivity and edge processing. If you take the factory of the future, for example, think about having a more agile production line where you don't have to retool to produce a new product. Think about having more data, more connected devices, more understanding what your machines are doing in real time and being able to control them. All require this kind of more advanced, I guess, just better connectivity in general and some sort of real-time response. And this is where the edge compute comes in. I also want to kind of mention sports as well, which might not be an industry, and also the gaming industry. And by gaming, I mean kind of platform games like your Fortnites and your Call of Duties that a lot of people are now playing online. And these have kind of been exacerbated, I think, by COVID. So with people locked down at home, they're looking for experiences of sports, anchoring to get back out there. We're looking at kind of augmented reality type applications where you need that kind of faster connectivity and kind of real-time responses to get good experiences in those industries. I'll check myself for a second to bring myself back into today's challenges, because that was what the question was. But I think, tactically with, technology advantages, clients are looking more towards tech solutions to immediate challenges, be it in the workforce or digital transformation. So, taking those paper-based processes, turn them into digital. But tactical sometimes gives you license to be a bit more strategic in your thinking. So if something works, let's adopt that into our tech stack. Let's think about, scaling into enterprise a little bit more. And I can pick some examples as well. So we're, taking back to manufacturing, we're seeing a lot of manufacturing organizations wasting days looking for materials, which you might not think might be an issue, but when you're making bespoke products and it's quite high value, that time is money, so to speak. So a lot of organizations are looking at tech solutions to solve that. Similarly in hospitals, this stat shocked me, but nurses waste about 40% of their time looking for equipment. Think about the impact that could drive on frontline services. And again, tech, is a potential solution to that in terms of asset tracking, understanding in real time where things are. We've also got a kind of changing workforce as well, driven by perhaps Brexit, perhaps COVID, a lot of kind of external forces. So organizations are struggling to recruit the right capability. One particular steel manufacturer from our 5G accelerator program that we run or are part of told us that they were looking to adopt more automation, so more kind of robotics and cobots, because they can't find the right capability. And you probably recognize that most of the solutions I'm talking about to these challenges require that kind of robust, flexible connectivity and some sort of real kind of processing power close to the device or close to that kind of infrastructure, which means we'll see kind of more and more this distributed data and distributed compute that Luke and David are talking about. And it needs to be managed in a coordinated way. I guess, Luke, you're working quite a lot on the front line with clients. What are your client conversations revealing?
So I always look at this as not a new problem. It's more that it's a growing problem that needs acting and ongoing intervention, not just because you've got this wave of innovative kind of ideas, but equally, I guess some of the challenges I'm often dealing with some of my customers is perhaps some of the more mundane everyday business challenges around the step change and incremental kind of traffic growth, which some forecasts put at 20 to 30% year on year, or the disruptive nature that M&A transactions have, particularly in our global businesses, where it's really quite easy and quick to acquire multiple new cloud tenants in a blink of an eye. I think for me, the great thing is that whilst cloud and its use is often part of the underlying problem, it's also a fundamental part of the solution. So if I look what we've been doing perhaps over the last 5 to 6 years, effectively I'd classify it as assisting our clients take that first step towards the edge. And depending on which industry and where they are on their journey, this is an ongoing step from what we're observing. And it's perhaps had three main factors. So we've talked around multi-cloud. Well, multi-cloud has meant multi-network, and with different applications in different places, optimized for delivery in different ways. That's meant applying intelligent routing decisions and optimization techniques at various hops along the journey, some controlled by the customer with things like SD-WAN and the uptake that we've seen in that domain, but also others done by the service provider using things like CDN or private backhaul. Secondly, we've needed peering points at the edge of that global backbone. It's great to have high speed between your clouds, but in moving to this kind of multi-network architecture, we've needed to allow flexibility of integration of the various underlay and overlay networks that have appeared for both multiple types of access and backhaul. I think the third part of this then comes back to applying the security on top. So when you want to open up your edge, use multiple networks, make lots of decisions, we've seen the introduction and the uptake in things like SASE, a really broad umbrella for a broad set of security capabilities that allow you to inspect and control that traffic. Clearly, no organization wants to be deploying multiple layers of security capability at every single site or on every single user's machine, because it's just far too expensive. So what we found is that actually we can be a lot more intelligent about doing a lot of the heavy lifting inspection at the cloud edge, and using that kind of natural scalability and the access to analytical and insight capabilities that cloud compute can underpin. This has typically meant that we've already started moving, whether we purposely thought of it in this way, but we've already started on that journey towards a country-based edge or a sub-regional based edge, depending on the regulatory requirements or the overall price performance mix that's required for the customer. I see these next wave of opportunities almost driving organizations to take that further step outwards.
Gosh, there's a lot to unpack there, really, isn't there, Luke? So I guess, I mean, what kind of help are your clients asking for at the moment? What are you seeing?
So, as discussed, I'm usually addressing and assisting my clients preempt or respond to those challenges of multi-cloud and moving more network and security functionality to the edge to give them greater resilience, capacity, performance. And this tends to be IT stakeholders, and they're either in the process of adopting or tuning what they have. Where clients have not hit a burning platform thus far, they can often then be kind of picking this up as part of the next investment cycle. Ultimately, we are helping them build what I look as a framework architecture, supply chain and delivery model to rethink how they can become more flexible and agile in delivering connectivity, effectively becoming more accepting and confident in responding to the unpredictability of network demand. No one's quite sure what the use cases are going to be, where they're going to be delivered, and how quickly they might come online. And so basing your architecture on that, on the foundations of flexibility and agility, is really important. This hopefully allows edge compute or extensions of edge compute and new connectivity types such as 5G not to be a revolution of the approach, but an extension that we can help mobilize as the new use cases land.
So David, it feels like this really is a developing topic. What are the opportunities and perhaps the challenges for our listeners in this space?
So the opportunity is really around enabling business changes that have been constrained today by their data volumes, connectivity speeds, reliability, latency, these sorts of topics. Examples of those would be, let's say, video analytics. For example, a retail outlet that wants to have a checkout-free experience and uses video cameras to fill that shopping basket. Or another example would be remote control, whether that be a drone or whether it be maintenance that's being done on a wind farm remotely. Another example would be virtual reality, augmented reality, and connecting these devices seamlessly and without lag so that individuals at a distance can help, let's say, remote engineers. Another example might be mobility or agility, factories or environments that are currently wired that need high-level data connections, but really need to be able to cut the wires and allow flexibility in the design of those solutions. I guess 5G and Edge not only enables these use cases, but it also allows you to optimize the capacity deployed in the various hops between the site, the edge location, and a centralized cloud. But you ask also about the challenges. The challenges are that a distributed cloud with edge compute is far more complex. It requires new technology to adopt and understand this sort of world, and it requires an ecosystem of partners to harness how we deliver those solutions, the applications, the connectivity, the compute, and so on. Steve, do you want to bring to light some of these specific examples?
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought you gave some great examples there, David. I want to pick up on your video analytics one, if I could, and talk about probably my favorite use case, if I'm honest, for video analytics, and that is 5G and pig farming. Now, you might think, what the hell has 5G got to do with pig farming? But 60% of the world's pigs actually reside in China. So it is a massive industry and really important to their economy. And if you can kind of imagine these huge, what the kind of campus-based pig farms, so loads of buildings, multiple stories. So you've got multi-story buildings. Each pig has, well, not their own one-bedroom apartment, but they're each pen and kind of, so you've got hundreds of thousands of pigs on these farms. So it's a massive challenge for them to manage it. And what they've done actually is applied a 5G private network to it and some edge processing. And it allows them to really kind of optimize the management of that facility. So if you could imagine, each floor has some HD cameras mounted on rails, so they can kind of zoom around, essentially running facial recognition on pigs. They can pick up, I mean, a pig is a pig to me, and I couldn't tell the difference, but essentially they can kind of identify and tag each pig so they understand which pig is where and location. They can understand also when a pig is becoming ill, so they analyze behavioral changes and patterns. They can also manage the feeding, so they know the typical growth rate of a pig, and they can kind of manage that in a proactive way. So they've got some robotic feeders as well. So all of this is controlled by that 5G private network and some edge compute processing power. And what they've managed to do actually is reduce the cost of a pig by £10. Now, that might not seem a lot, but in a huge industry where you're talking about millions of pigs, that is a significant saving and optimization. And that type of solution can be applied. I mean, they're applying that to farming there, but actually it can be applied across manufacturing and kind of healthcare. So you can use these solutions to kind of to understand and optimize your factory or your hospital in a kind of much more efficient way. So I mean, some other examples. So David, you talked about robotics and kind of drones as well. I want to pick up on, again, a manufacturing example. So there's a factory 56 in Germany has a kind of, again, a private 5G network. And instead of each vehicle, it's an auto manufacturer, and each car is kind of mounted on a production line. The cars actually move around to different stations controlled by robots. So very much a kind of agile production line. Another example, in the US, the Department of Defense has spent a significant amount of money, hundreds of millions of dollars, on enabling a lot of kind of solutions backed by 5G and edge on their warehouses. So where are, a lot of equipment at one time, understanding the movement of it, what's its usage patterns, etc. All some real-time data that they need back on their equipment. And we're seeing kind of more drones and robotics coming to the UK market. There's a number of manufacturers that are using drones to assess. Well, David mentioned wind farms there. There's also cranes at a number of factories as well, and they use kind of drones to essentially manage the safety. So it's better to have a drone fly up there and assess it with a HD camera rather than somebody climbing on that crane. Picking up on some of the augmented reality applications in the US, we're seeing golf, where actually Deloitte has developed an application for the US Open men's and women's, where you could follow shot by shot specific pros. So you can see it in a kind of augmented reality type view. And the Port of Antwerp as well, close to home in Belgium, where Convestro and Deloitte were involved in this use case as well, where we've got augmented reality to do remote maintenance. David mentioned that as well. So, heading out into the field, if you're not an expert, you see a kind of problem, you're not an expert in that, you can kind of bring in an expert through your video call in an augmented reality. They can see what the problem is and advise you in the field. And we're going to see more and more of this. So, as more tech comes into the market, we're going to see more machine vision type solutions, more robotics. So some examples, specifically COVID related, actually, we had in South Korea and China, robots were actually used to help fight COVID. So where frontline workers were exposed to potential patients, robots were used to take temperature and monitor kind of people movement. I think with the invention of the metaverse, or we're talking a lot more about it now, we're going to see more kind of augmented reality, virtual reality type applications, to the point where we're talking about haptic sensing and what that means for the need to have edge compute and kind of some advanced connectivity or fast connectivity. More IoT and wearables, mass sensorization. Everybody now has a smartwatch, or a Whoop device, or something that's kind of picking up, vital signs and statistics. You were just going to see this grow and grow and grow to the point now where we're already talking about 6G, Wi-Fi 7. They're already been talked about at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. And for those of you who don't know, Mobile World Congress is kind of like the consumer electronics for telco geeks, I think. So there's lots of future examples that we're being talked about and we're seeing in the market. I guess again, I kind of want to talk a little bit about advanced gaming. So this is often a source for innovation, gaming platforms, and again, talking about the metaverse and what's coming along. This will drive a lot of innovation. We've seen Microsoft, buying up Activision recently, and a lot of what will happen in the game industry will be about bringing that processing power closer to the user for a better experience. So think in real terms, about your headset or your handset that you're using on your PlayStation 5, having some processing power and kind of providing a better experience for in that kind of gaming platform, towards the kind of Ready Player One end of the market, for those of you that are familiar with that film. So I guess the decision is what data do you need? And we've talked about kind of distributed cloud. What do you need access to now? What do you need in terms of a response versus what can you kind of process later? And so, what data are you sending to the edge, and what is beyond to a regional cloud? Because if we're talking about latency and responses, any additional nodes, any additional firewalls that's in the way of that data packet is going to be delayed slightly. So, more edge processing gives you the better experience, more real-time responses, and that's why we're talking about kind of robotics and real-time data, real-time information. And we're working a lot, helping clients imagine their future through. David mentioned the 5G labs that we've got, but we do have kind of a lot of capability to deliver these type of solutions, and our aspiration is to also run some private networks. And I will kind of mention in Portugal we have a capability that develops and has that kind of real 5G technical capability with edge compute. So Deloitte is a kind of player across the piece. I don't want to end on a kind of negative note for my bit, but David talked a little bit about challenges, so I just wanted to kind of speak about them from some of the first-hand research that we've had from talking to clients and specifically around our 5G accelerator as well. So there is quite a few at the minute barriers to adoption, I think, or a lot of challenges that make people think twice about adopting technology at scale. One of them is really kind of the need to find the right teams to translate that tech message into operational value. So Luke talked before about his experience with the IT teams and the networking teams. I've had a similar challenge with operational teams and how to translate that tech opportunity into what it means for operational value. Also, there's quite a big disruption in what I've been talking about in terms of business models. Think about moving from a kind of fixed production line to a more agile production line. How to do that and how to make that change is quite substantial. We actually spoke to a defense manufacturer in the UK, and they gave us a real example in what they're doing. This was from our 5G accelerator. Currently, they actually have to build a new factory to manufacture a new aircraft. And what 5G and edge compute provides them with is the possibility to change that model and really have a kind of agile production line, so they can retool to manufacture a new aircraft or a new aircraft type quite simply without actually having to build a new factory. The third one really is kind of cost, I guess. So, at a time when COVID has kind of impacted a lot of businesses, they're telling us that at the minute they're running lean. It's really difficult to kind of get the headspace to innovate and think strategically. And much of what they're focused on is this kind of invest to save approach. So that's where we are really kind of in terms of, real today type use cases and the challenges that we're seeing.
Fantastic. Thanks, Steve and David. I guess that's really illuminated the range of use cases, and I guess how the users and the business community are seeing this. But Luke, from your perspective, what are you seeing from an IT lens?
The strategic opportunity for me is perhaps once the business team has coerced around and generated the new idea and looked at how they might exploit a new ecosystem of edge technologies, is really to be able to put IT in a position where they can almost flip the question around, not be playing catch up around where my cloud is. It's almost ask which cloud do you want and where's the best place to put it. And that effectively allows us to focus less on control and availability and demand management and managing expectations into a certain box, but more on actually just simply satisfying the business objective, knowing that we've got the right architecture and we have the appropriate tools to monitor and manage it. I think one of the minor Phillips here might be ultimately an efficiency opportunity, because I think we still see in a lot of organizations that there's a lot of data and compute that is still sat out there on the enterprise side. Good examples exist within manufacturing and logistics, whereby the constraint is often what have we always done historically, how we organizationally set up, perhaps performance, but often it's simply the IT service continuity plans just haven't grown up. And as the technology matures, as it stabilizes, as confidence grows, there's potential that aspects of edge compute managed under a single kind of hyperscaler setup and orchestration, combined with confidence in the reliability and performance of that edge connectivity, allows us to start looking at, well, maybe there's viable substitution opportunities over time for some of those businesses. I think Stephen's touched on a number of those blockers or constraints. What I often see, there can be an inertia in a number of these environments. It's often the crown jewels of the organization and its performance. And so you see an inertia driven by cost or disruption, or in some cases, simply a lack of a modern application alternative to fulfill or replace that function, particularly in manufacturing, where some of the machinery and the solutions being deployed might be 10, 20 years old or more. You equally see things like organizational barriers. And I see this particularly in the network space, whereby you can often find there's a federated management set of ideas and direction in terms of how networking for digital services to customers versus the networking for internal operations, for manufacturing, say, and then the networking for common enterprise shared services. They may not all be owned by one organization. They may be three different parties pulling in three different directions with three different sets and supply chains, which can often make tying that end-to-end journey together difficult. We equally see the challenge around availability and consistency. I think there's often an immediate reaction around the ideas are really exciting, but when you want to operationalize those and look at, are the solutions on offer really globally scalable? Is this something I can do in just one factory because 5G and edge compute has been prioritized there? Or is this something that I can lift and shift and quickly apply, 10, 20, 30, 40 different times, irrespective of geography? And I think there's just a recognition that across the industry, there's a significant investment required from both telcos and hyperscalers. And that is always going to be prioritized around the most mature markets for adoption, where the most scaled and densest footprint of users exists. And let's not forget where the geographic scale of the country dictates that edge compute is actually something useful. And so I foresee that the early adopters here are going to have to get comfortable using a common approach, but what may underpin that is a mix of on-prem, edge, and classic cloud nodes from the hyperscalers to meet their needs, with the delivery and support models that can flex to support that, hopefully in a coherent way, which can then evolve over time.
Oh gosh, we've really unpacked a huge topic, I think, in today's podcast. Thank you so much. I guess lots for our listeners to certainly think about, really. I guess to sum it up, David, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners on this topic?
I simply want to thank you for lending us your ear. You've probably heard we're pretty passionate about this subject, and we've got a lot more material to talk about on the subject as well. So we have a number of publications that we would be delighted to share with our clients, whether it be our predictions review that kind of predicts the future of the telecoms and media and technology area, or it's our tech trends reports, or the survey I referred to earlier around advanced wireless. We'd love to talk to you more about it. If you would like to do so, then please do contact any of us on our LinkedIn page. If you Google Deloitte Cloud Speed, you will be able to find this podcast. And at the bottom of that podcast, you will find all of our contact details, and we'd love to hear more from you. So that's it from me.
Fantastic. Well, look, thanks so much for being here today, team. It was wonderful to have you all on the episode to answer this question of where's my cloud? So thank you to David, Luke, and Steve. But as part of our endeavour to keep you up to date with the developments from major public cloud providers, this week we have Usman Majid, our Azure Solutions Architect from Deloitte. Over to you, Usman.
Thank you, Adam. I'm delighted to have been invited onto the Excellent Cloud Speed podcast and to be joining our regular cloud updates team, where I will be focusing on Microsoft Azure. As our guests have been discussing, the intelligent edge is the future of computing, and therefore it is no surprise that we see many of the major cloud providers investing heavily in tools, products, and services to support edge computing. Microsoft in particular have a variety of Azure offerings which help provide a consistent, comprehensive, and secure platform from the cloud to the edge. For example, Azure SQL Edge is an offering which extends the Microsoft SQL engine out to the edge devices. With Azure SQL Edge, you can benefit from built-in data streaming and in-database machine learning for low latency analytics. Data can also be processed at the edge in online, offline, or hybrid environments to overcome bandwidth and latency constraints. Additionally, you can deploy and update from the Azure portal, allowing for consistent security and ease of management. Azure IoT Edge is another key offering which enables users to consolidate operational data at scale in Azure. With Azure IoT Edge, you can deploy, manage, and run cloud-native workloads directly on IoT devices, allowing for faster reactions to local changes and the ability to operate reliably in extended offline periods. Azure IoT Edge can also be integrated with Azure Monitor, allowing for detailed remote monitoring of all IoT Edge devices directly in the Azure portal. There is also the Azure Stack Edge feature, which is a purpose-built hardware that brings the compute, storage, and intelligence of Azure out to the edge. Many scenarios for edge computing involve remote locations with limited internet access. But with Azure Stack Edge, applications can be run from these remote locations and can still work when connectivity to the cloud is limited. Additionally, machine learning models can be run at edge locations, addressing latency and connectivity issues. Analysis and data transformation can be done locally, powered by the built-in processing power of the Azure Stack Edge hardware, before sending only the required data to the cloud for further processing or storage. The edge computing offerings can be managed consistently in Azure due to the integration with Azure Active Directory. So even if you have multiple edge devices and environments, the profiles, conditional access, and identity protection can all be configured and managed centrally through the Azure portal. With the increasing availability of 5G connectivity and the growing demand for real-time analytics and insights, it is clear that edge computing is the next evolution in how the cloud is utilized. Today we have covered just a few features from one of the major cloud providers, but there are a whole host of offerings and features available today and in development across all cloud providers as they work to meet the demands of their clients in the edge computing space. That's all for the updates on this episode. Thank you for having me. Back to you, Adam.
Sadly, that brings us to the end of today's episode. We hope you found it insightful, and if so, please rate, share and subscribe, and check us out at deloitte.co.uk/cloud. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn at Adam Gogarty. Until we meet again, I'm Adam Gogarty, and you've been listening to Cloud Speed by Deloitte.